you've got some new scouting reports, and we heard John Lynch talk about him. So the 49ers took Drake Jackson. We both like the pick. They took him with the 29th pick of the second round. I'll reread some of the scouting report that I got on him. And you can mention the first one you got was that do you have them handy, or do you want me to start with the one I had?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the scouting report that I got from somebody around who was around him his whole time at USC, this is what they said to me. I'm not as high on him as some USC people are. I was confused with his weight loss freshman to sophomore year. He dropped 20 pounds. He's awkward at 6'4", 260. It's like, is he a really big outside linebacker or an undersized defensive end? I always thought he looked like he could play at 280 and be a beast. Always thought if some defensive coordinator got him with a versatile scheme and he puts his hand down, he can drop. He's athletic enough to do both. First round pick, I don't think he's that. I think he's a great second round pick, but his best ball could definitely be ahead of him. So that was the scouting report I got. And then I'll add to what John Lynch said Friday night. John Lynch said, when you see all his weight loss and weight gain, you wonder what's up. But when you study him, you realize he was just doing what the coaches wanted. And that was part of my guy's point, was like SC was kind of a mess. They were doing different stuff with him. And to mix it up, they had him drop some weight because the defensive coordinator was a linebacker coach, etc. He also lost about 20 pounds. He got sick, John Lynch said. So there's a reason for it. And it sounds like, I think John Lynch's line was, we want guys to be as powerful, the lowest weight they can be, and be as powerful as they can be. Whatever that weight is, that's where we want.
Drake Jackson, you like? Question mark. Me. Response. Shocked he was there, to be honest. Like Drake a lot as a talent. Has had a weird bad spring because of the huge weight fluctuation. Like, that is a specific thing, this weight fluctuation. Currently in the spring, dropped weight, and historically his career up and down. He's young and obviously just has some maturity issue with age. If his weight is right and he can figure out the right spot to be at, he's a very good rusher. We had him right there. I ask, a little D40, if he would then have to play, he'd have to lose 30 pounds. Yes, he has that ability to bend and rush the passer. Ideally, I think he can play it a little heavier, though. So they don't think he can just be, what's D4 known as, right? 230-pound rusher, no run. He cannot play the run at all, but he's an elite speed rusher. This guy, people think, can be a really good pass rusher, but be a little more powerful. There is just question, and part of it is this guy's just turned 21 years old. It's like, is he going to play at 240? Is he going to play at 255? There is just some unknown with this guy.
I think he might play higher than that.
260?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's just going to be a work in progress to figure out exactly which it might take a couple years. Like, that's, to me, this year, I would just focus on him. I would start Kerry Hyder, and this guy would be a nickel pass rusher. I would bring this guy in to, like, I would just start a very basic role. Your job is to give me 10 to 15 snaps. What I think ideally people like, can D4 just give us some pass rushes? And it's like, no, he can't. Can you just play a role where, hell, you get a couple series in the first half, couple series in the second half, if we got the lead, and you tee off, my man. And we'll figure it out over time, like what you need to eat, how you get it. Because the weight fluctuation, like you said, he's young. He's just trying to, like, you're telling us to do the scheme changes. For the 49ers, 100%, to me, they need a pass rusher. They do not need, now eventually if he becomes a good run player, their linebackers make all the tackles, right? They got 3 linebackers who fucking annihilate people. I need this guy to rush the passer. Because one thing we saw last year is, like, Bosa turns into a top 5 NFL player. Can you imagine if he just gets a little help and just, like, has the
and Eric Armstead is inside now?
Yeah, and just they always find, and hell, Kinlaw can just give him a couple snaps. You know, you can see where John Lynch and Kyle are like, we're cooking. Yeah. Because Syric's like, woohoo!
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to.
Do you agree, though? Just give this guy a specific role early and then let it grow as time goes on.
I think it's a great idea. And the reason I think it's a great idea is what you're doing is you're taking a player who has not come from a stable situation. USC has not been good. It's been noise everywhere. And from a schematic standpoint, it's been all over the place.
Haven't they changed schemes like 3 times?
They've changed schemes multiple times. Obviously, they changed his position multiple times. And it's one thing when you change positions and we just move you and you learn new technique. It's another thing when you have to gain or lose a bunch of weight. And we're talking like 20 pounds, a lot of weight. Like, let me play it this way now. And his thing is he's willing. Like he said, I'll do, you want to make me a 3-4 outside linebacker? You want to make me a 4-3 defensive end? But this was pre-draft. But I just think when you take a guy who's had a lack of direction, which I think we could say that's been part of the situation he's been in, there has not been a clear, simple idea about what he is. You know, you look at it like a little bit like a pinch hitter. Like, hey, man, your job in this spot is to just go up and hunt fastballs. And then we'll work over the next 2 years. You'll become an everyday player and we'll help you with the breaking ball and all that. But right now, let's hunt fastballs. I think you just strip it all down. And I think the Niners, they're pretty if you could choose a position coach to be one of your best position coaches, I think D-line, O-line would be really high on your list too. I think you're lucky when you have that, because generally you'd be afraid of your best D-line coach. Sometimes your best position coaches become coordinators. And once they become coordinators, if they're good at that job, they're gone. And the Niners are not really at risk at that with Chris Kurasek, right? I can never quite say it right.
Kasarik.
Thank you.
I think he's even gone on record. Like, obviously, I think he makes a ton. He might make $1.5 million, which they have no problem doing. I don't even think he aspires to like do coverages and defense. He could make $2 million a year. $3 million. You pay him whatever it takes to keep him around if he wants to stay, right?
He's a really valuable asset, because Drake Jackson, drafted by somebody else without a good defensive line coach, might be a worse pick. Drafted by a team with a really good defensive line coach, what you're saying is, I've got the artist, let me get the highest quality clay here. And he just has the potential to be really high quality clay based on his physical attributes.
Well, I think part of it too, when you have a great position coach in football, you can, because I was listening to someone say, like, because I've just been thinking a lot about Kayvon in New York. And then I heard, you know who their defensive coordinator is? Wink Martindale. And you know what he's used to in Baltimore? Dealing with some people. And he can just handle personalities on top of like scheme and defense. But it's like, he's been around some crazies, so it's like, bring him on. I bet there's a decent chance Wink's banging the table. Like, I dare you to give me this guy. You see what I cook up with this guy? And I bet Kasarik, and the difference is with the Niners, like, they were drafting 61. Like, a lot had to go at, like, him. He had to be there. He easily could have gone in the second. And you said this last night when we did the Drake video for YouTube. If Drake Jackson, who was a huge recruit, had been coming from a stable situation, like if he had just been playing for Ryan Day at Ohio State, or for Kirby or Nick, or, even for Mario the last 3 years at Oregon, like one coach, very stable, consistent team, you'd be like, this has been a little weird, right? But it's easy to justify it when guys come from weirdness. I think I text you today, I look up, it's like the 7th LSU guy, and it's like, I thought LSU was a joke. They had like 8 guys get drafted, because I think everyone inside is going, weird things are going on, weird things. I mean, look, their best player ended up going, it's like, where's Stingley going to draft no, he went 3rd. Because what do you think deep down they went in their draft room? Like, this is a weird situation. We think this guy's a good kid. We think in here he's young. The other thing I think you feel good about too, when you take a guy that comes from a weird situation with a lot of question marks, I can deal with youth. Like, if you're like 23, 24, I'd like you a little mature. But like when you just turned 21, I think it's easy for like John Lynch. Now, he's a bad example because he was probably mature at 21. But a lot of people, like other coaches in the draft room or scouts, like, what were we all at 21? Like, to give this guy time. And Armstead, I think, is one of the, he's not going to be talked about like this, but at least in the Niners vacuum, one of the better stories on the team. He's blown me away. Like, his maturity, what he's become as a player on and off the field. Like, I didn't see this coming. Honestly, he's become.
I remember draft night, you, me, and Ricky Waters at we had a Hooters.
Yeah, I think so.
In the
Buffalo
South
Wild
Bay.
Wings.
Maybe. Doesn't feel like it was a Hooters, but it might have been a Hooters.
I think it was a Hooters. Burlingame.
I didn't like the pick.
Something.
I didn't like the pick. And I'm with you. I think he has become one of the,
very stable,
clearly one of the building blocks of the team.
Yeah,
you'd say, right? And that's part of it. You're putting him in a room with, just like with Javon Kinlaw, you're putting him in a room with, all right, Bosa's just going to be over there taking care of business, and there's Armstead, right? And you've got a lot of guys who are fighting for their careers it tends to be the Niners bring in these guys who turn into really good players for them, but they're proving themselves as part of coming to the 49ers is I'm about business because I'm not a first round pick and I'm not getting the benefit of the doubt, right? Some of these other guys that the Niners bring in. So I think it has to be a pretty mature room for the most part because the competition level is pretty high.
I remember when I was with the Eagles, and again, this guy's a better player. Like Drake Jackson won't become this just because this guy's bigger. But it was like, what's up with this JPP guy? You know, he was just this major question mark in the draft. He had like number 1 overall level talent, but he was kind of weird. And I'm pretty sure, you know, he hadn't even lived in America that long, but people just didn't quite know, like, what would he be like, you know, getting him. And the New York Giants took him because they went, you know what? We'll get him around Justin Tuck and OCU Manure and he'll be fine. And what happened? They got him around and they won the Super Bowl, I think, that year. And he was awesome. And it was like he just excelled. And he ended up blowing off his hand. But he's still on the Tampa. Like he's going to go on to have a long, long career because the foundation was the people he was around immediately with a high level room.
Yeah.
And I do think having high level rooms really matter when you want to take chances on guys in football, because that room, like the D-line room, I would say 15 hours a week just together in a meeting room, let alone on the practice. You and I go to a lot of practices. Like, I guess NFL practices probably aren't even that much different. If you're listening to this, you played high school football. Like you spend a lot of time at practice, at minimum, like an hour of 2-hour practice just with your group, right? Just standing around each other, just being around each other, talking with each other, helmet off with each other, around the coach. Just, you're kind of in little pods, right? And that pod specifically, the O-line and D-line group, because like wide receivers end up going like with the running backs and like that, those two guys, the O-line and D-line, kind of stick with their own little self for the majority of practice before the team gets together, right?
Right.
So having like Eric, like, hey man, no, you got to do this. You got to do this is a huge, huge valuable thing to have. Like he's worth his value to them if he's going to be a leader on top of just the way he's playing. But
yeah, as long as he produces like that, the other stuff you get with him is pretty valuable.
Yeah, because Nick, you would say, is not the biggest talker.
No, but is just a guy that you look bad if you don't put forth effort with Nick Bosa standing next to you.
For sure.
Because he's going to look good.
But you do need someone who's going to be a little vocal.